Okay, well, yes. Okay, well, I am doing the fifth precept, do not become intoxicated. Polish clarity, dispel delusion. And then the Bodhidharma has, in the realm of the intrinsically pure Dharma, not harboring delusions is the precept of not becoming intoxicated. And Dogen writes, we are naturally pure. There is nothing to be deluded about. This is enlightenment itself. Understand this truly, and no intoxicants can be taken in. So I was thinking of the we are naturally pure, that we are born pure, we are born unclouded. And then as we progress through life, we start getting a little clouded and a little, we're not as pure as we were when we were born. And, it makes me think of the story that I heard a long time ago, when there was a new baby in the family, and there was a toddler who kept saying, I want to talk to my baby brother. And the parents were a little nervous about letting him talk to the baby all by himself. And finally he insisted, and they put the baby monitor in the room and let him go in to talk to the baby. And he said, please tell me about God. I forgot, I'm beginning to forget. And so that makes me think of, what we're like when we're born. And then we manage to cloud up our vision in different ways. And in this way, it's taking intoxicants. And so one of the things I read, the purpose of this precept is to cultivate the clarity that keeps us alert and present. And taking intoxicants clouds that clarity. And I read the thing, something that Shakyamuni Buddha said, now when I view all beings everywhere, I see that each of them possesses the wisdom and virtue of the Tathagata, which is another name for Buddha. But because of their attachment and delusions, they cannot bear witness to that fact. So, and I think with meditation, we are attempting to get back to that unclouded vision. All beings in the universe are unclouded from the beginning, but the haze created by their use of drinks and drugs keeps them from acknowledging it. And I also read a thing from Thich Nhat Hanh, and he was very strict about drugs and alcohol and lots of other things, food additives, TV, internet. He said that we are what we consume, and mindful consumption is the main object of the fifth precept, is what he said. And the foundation of all the precepts is mindfulness. So we're working on mindfulness, and all these precepts is helping us with mindfulness. And Thich Nhat Hanh also said, I'm determined not to use alcohol or any other intoxicant, or to ingest foods or other items that contain toxins, such as certain TV programs, magazines, books, films, and conversations. So that's a lot of things there that we have to avoid or be aware of. And Diane Rossetto talked about intent, and it's our intent. She doesn't necessarily say that we should not use any drugs or alcohol, but it's our intent in using it. And she has a story about a person who was a wine connoisseur, And he avoided working the precepts for quite a while because he didn't want to stop being a wine connoisseur. And so then he started meditating on that and pausing each time he drank wine and considered the intent that he was using to drink the wine. And it made me think of when I was using drugs and alcohol. My intent for my wine tastings was not the bouquet and the taste and really immersing myself into really enjoying the wine. It was to drink that wine. And one of the times I was doing wine tasting, they said, well, what you should do is swirl it around in your mouth, get the taste, and then spit it out. Well, I couldn't do that because that would be wasting wine. And so one of the reasons I was really interested in this precept is because I've been clean and sober for 33 years. And so for me, I don't take in any drugs or alcohol. And when I first got sober, I really started my spiritual seeking, because before that, I think my drugs and alcohol were my spirits. And so, they were my higher power. And I didn't know it. I wasn't aware of it. But when I finally got sober, then I started, just trying different spiritual practices. I went to church for a while. I did yoga. I did some other things. I did Native American stuff, and I started doing the meditation with Wy'East Zen Center, and that's how I got here. But so for me, taking in intoxicants, it would not work at all. But for some people, I think, like Diane Rossetto mentioned, having a beer on a hot summer day and really enjoying the taste of the beer is probably fine for a lot of people, but not for me, and not for people who are addicted to that kind of stuff. So, but because of, now I don't use drugs and alcohol, but I do, I was thinking about the TV programs, the food, stuff like that. And I use that kind of stuff, I think, to escape reality. So one of the questions I wanted to start out with by asking the group is, think about what do you use to escape reality, or if anything? I mean, maybe all of you don't use anything at all, and you're totally pure and unclouded. But so I thought that was my first discussion question. So think about that and answer.
Fiction. From my earliest years, fiction has been my great escape.
For me, it's video games. I like to immerse myself in a different world. I'm just, that's what I like to do.
Any other?
Yeah, for me, it can be television, or it can also be food. I think food is a big escape for me as well. And it's something I'd like to understand and rid myself of, not of eating, but of using it as an escape.
Right.
Doom scrolling Twitter.
Aha. Yep.
So my question is escape always a bad thing?
Well, and that's what, I don't know. That's a good question, because, like Diane Rossetto talked about intent, but her intent is still seeking clarity.
Mhm.
And so like all the things that people have mentioned, we can eat, we can enjoy our food, or it can be an escape. And I don't know, that's a good question.
I mean, escaping into a well written video game or a beautiful novel. Maybe again the intent, like, can you escape mindfully? Like say you say to yourself, "This is I'm going to now enter another world, and I'm going to really enjoy it."
Well, I think that is I think that's what she means by intent.
Mm.
It doesn't mean that you should not read fiction or, or you should not see a good movie. I think one of the things she mentions is if we are watching a movie when we probably should be washing the dishes or doing the laundry or, using it as an escape. But, I think that if you enjoy a good book or enjoy a good movie, but it's kind of like, what you said about, enjoying a cool beer on a hot day. If whereas Thich Nhat Hanh seems like, you don't do any of that ever. And you keep other people from doing it too. He talks about his, family and community and ancestors, so what do other people think about that? What about escape?
Well, I have no pretensions or intention to become a monk. So I love Thich Nhat Hanh, but some of his are monastic vows.
Mhm.
So he was vegetarian and he was vegan and everything. That's not me, and that's okay. And when I'm escaping, it's usually to relax because I get really busy and I get wound up, and then I do a giant crossword puzzle.
Mhm.
And it relaxes me, and it's fun. And sometimes I'm reading, but I'm very, Ed is very much aware that he'll be watching something and it's say, you don't want to watch this, it's violent. I do not like anything, there's some level that it's necessary in the story or something, but no, I do not watch anything that's violent. I don't want that. And that's part of my mindful consuming. So I'll leave it at that.
No, I think that's great. What about other people?
Well, do you think? Okay, sorry, go ahead.
I kind of think when I was just listening, kind of like when Teiko said, well, is it always bad, escaping? I don't think it is always bad. I think going back to the intention, even if you're escaping dishes, is that really, it's like if you're escaping dishes and you want to read a book or do something else instead of the dishes, is there really something wrong with that? Big deal, there's dishes in the sink. I don't know. And even when, as you were talking, I was thinking, well, in all reality, when we meditate, aren't we escaping from everything? Aren't we shutting, it's like, we are escaping everything, walking away from everything that's going on around us at this moment and just sitting. And we're doing it with intention. And, but of course, there's a lot of other things going on that we could be involved in. So, yeah, I don't think, unless it's an unhealthy obsession or something, or like you said, an addiction, but I don't know that escaping into a good fantasy book, into a good fantasy game, I don't know that that's really, our brains need to rest. They really need to shut down. They need to rest, just like we need sleep. And I don't know that escaping is always a bad thing at all. I think it's almost the word that it's almost like a trigger, the word, the way, instead of putting a different word on it. I know what has kind of came up for me.
It seems to me that maybe, as like Choan just said, maybe the point at which it becomes unhealthy is when you do it when you don't want to do it, and it becomes an addiction. So if you mindfully, I'm going to just, because I don't even think it's escaping reality to engage one's imagination. You are engaging your right brain. Maybe you're not doing all this left brain stuff that we think is so important, but developing one's imagination seems to me undervalued in our culture. So I'm all for that. But yeah, maybe it's at the point at which you find yourself engaging in these things when you don't want to, but you do it anyway.
Well, actually, there's the other factor that doing them as a way to deny reality, to fill your head up with something that keeps you from having to deal with reality. Choan's example of meditation is well taken, but that's an example of being naturally pure, of not harboring delusions, whereas fiction is another way to get things in your head and perhaps replace the things that other people are trying to put there, but nonetheless.
Well, Choan, I think you raised a really interesting point. I mean, is meditation an escape? Do you guys think that? That's a great question.
Right, and an escape from what?
Yeah, because I'm not sure I see it as an escape. I do a lot of things to avoid meditating, so I guess I'm escaping from my escape.
Well,
I think doing Zen or meditation is a choice. We live in an addicted society, even if we personally have dealt with our own addictions, but our society is full of distractions. So without any effort, the delusions are there. So for me, to choose sitting is a choice to go into a practice that's proven to be the challenge, to sit in my body, the effort to sit as best I can. And I'm choosing to avoid what I would consider just the nuts and bolts of getting through the day. I can always fill that up. I've rarely been a person who's bored, but I see sitting as a conscious choice. And escape is good as long as you, I think, keep it in balance. To me, that's Buddhism. I mean, I gave up alcohol because I knew that's what I needed to do for my body, and there were a lot of alcoholics in my family. It came to me easily to go that path, but I thought, well, I'm just messing myself up, future self. So it was like anything else, just a choice. But I think we make choices all the time. So if someone else wants to put a tag on it as escape, or that's their business. Thank you.
I really appreciate everything everybody has said, and we're running out of time. We have 1 minute if anyone has anything else to add, but it really is a cause for reflection, I can tell.
I just want to say two things. One is that to me, meditation is polishing clarity, is what it is, perhaps. And the business of dispelling delusion, if we're involved in a novel and are aware we're involved in the novel, that's one thing. And if I think there's a fine line between whether it's escaping or whether it's delusion. So, and it's the delusion we want to escape from. We don't want it. We want to dispel that. We want to be focused on what really is. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. That's good. Thank you so much, everybody. It was really good. Thanks.
Thank you, Penny. Choan, you're on, and you've got about 20 minutes.
You're muted, Choan.
Oh, I'm glad somebody told me. I would have rattled on for the 20 minutes. All right. So I have a lot of stuff that I wrote down, and so I'll try to kind of narrow it down, but I'll start with the precept. Do not dwell on past mistakes. Create wisdom from ignorance. In the realm of the flawless Dharma, not expounding upon error, is the precept of not dwelling on past mistakes. In the Buddha Dharma, there is one path, one Dharma, one realization, one practice. Do not engage in fault finding. Do not condone haphazard talk. Sorry, you guys, a phone call came right in on my iPad, right in the middle of that. So, the first thing that I thought about with this is that it's been really interesting for me over the years on where the focus on dwelling was. When you read all the commentary, this was meant for priests and lay people. And and when I go through some of these commentaries, it's definitely been expanded to Sangha and everybody. But at first, a lot of the notations are more that it was, you're not talking about the priest. You're not saying anything about what they've done or their flaws. And then it kind of went to the lay people and the Sangha, but you're not supposed to talk about them either. And one thing that came for me is every year when this came up, I've never really thought about that this was focusing on other people's missteps or mistakes. I always bring it back to me, that I've been focused, that I always have perseverated on what I've done wrong over my life, or my failures, or what I wish I could have changed. So it's interesting when I read this, that it's like, this really isn't about you, Kim. It was about everybody else. And it was interesting. I'm going to share a little two situations that came up just literally within the last week that really fit into this for me. One of them was actually I think the day before I started to really work on this talk. At work, I have had hidden in a drawer a single electric burner. We're not supposed to have coffee pots or burners in our offices. We're supposed to go down to the break room because of fire code. And I think I've had that burner in my desk for, I wouldn't be surprised if it's been there for 15 or 20 years. And I've always known not to pull that burner out if anybody else was at the office, but I'm notorious for being there late and nobody else is there. And so the other night I was at work, and the people there was two women out at the front desk. And when I had went out to drop off some papers, they were loading up their purses and they were leaving. So I go back into my office and I'm starving. And I'm like, you know what, I'm going to make me some ramen. Well, I'm sitting here doing paperwork. And so I pull out my little burner and I get some hot water and I start cooking some ramen at my desk. And lo and behold, my little burner's boiling away. And here comes the person that had loaded up their purse and was walking out, opened up my door and said, "Hey, Kim." And instantly I was like, now this is what the interesting part is. Instantly in my mind, I was going, Natalia's going to narc on me. She is totally going to narc on me. Natalia didn't say anything. She walked out of the office, left. I ate my ramen, washed up my burner, put it in my pan, put my burner, let it cool, put my burner back away. The next day, I get a call from my supervisor. Hey, Kim, Natalia called me. Instantly. Lauren, I knew she was going to narc on me. So then my supervisor says to me, she says, Natalia tells me that the office is going to have their safety committee walking through in 2 weeks, Kim. You need to do something with that burner. It's like, all right. So this is my supervisor. Instead of saying to me, Kim, you need to, you're not supposed to have that burner. She said, just stick it in your drawer. Don't have it out on your desk. So that's kind of that. So then on the way home, I'm perseverating on it. And I talked to a friend and she says to me, so Kim, are you pissed off because you got busted? Or have you even thought about the reality that you broke a rule, that you did something wrong? So I had to come home and think about that. And in this stuff that I was reading, one of the things that came up was Pat Clemens said that she totally had reminded us that there's the fourfold part of acknowledging when we do harm, that very first part of acknowledging, then contrition, admitting that you did it, the wholesome action taking place to do something about it, returning to our nature and not getting tangled up into that habitual energy, and resolving not to do it again. And that situation, because I didn't even bring that burner home. I didn't go through those 4 things. I stuck it back away. I didn't resolve, in that first part until somebody literally said to me, what is it, Kim, that you're pissed off about? Are you pissed off because she narked on you? Or are you pissed off at yourself that you broke a rule, that you did wrong? So then going back to, dwelling on it. It's like, okay, how long am I going to dwell on this mistake? How much, am I just going to go through those 4 pieces, fix it, and not do it again? So it was really kind of a real eye opener for me, just and to that dwelling, like, okay, look how long you've been a Buddhist, Kim. You've been a Buddhist for many years now, and you're still screwing up like this. I mean, that was pretty blatant. And so I had to really kind of think about that too, that judgment and dwelling on the mistakes instead of just trying to move through them. So that's my situation that kind of arose when this stuff was when this was coming up for me. One of the things that was said was that we really do need to be reminded that when we're doing the Buddhist life, we're trying to do the best we can. We're not just floating through. We really are trying to practice the Buddhist life and doing the best we can. And by those efforts, we're bound to make unskillful actions where, our efforts, if we weren't doing any work, there wouldn't be any errors. So just to kind of give ourselves grace about it, and that reminding us that if to have vows to break, is actually the Bodhisattva path. if you don't make any vows, there's nothing to break. And so it's good to take the precepts and to have vows to break, because otherwise you didn't take the precepts and you don't have any vows and there's nothing to break. So that was just kind of a good reminder as I was going through this. So I feel like I'm kind of floundering here. So James Baldwin, one cannot deny the humanity of another without diminishing one's own humanity. And this was talking a lot about when we're talking about other people, we're gossiping about other people, when we're judging, we just really cannot deny the humanity of another without diminishing our own. And Pat Fleming says, to get to the heart of our inner connectiveness in Zen practice, the ultimate function of the precepts is to the realization of non-duality, the realization that really we are not separate, that we are all part of the same seamless reality, and there is no way we can harm anything without harming ourselves, just as there is no way we can benefit from something without benefiting the extending to all of us. And then Roshi, category Roshi. Buddhist precepts are not moral or ethical imperatives given by someone that people must follow. I love this. They are the ground of Buddha's world through which we can manifest ourselves as Buddhas. We are already enlightened, and the precepts are already enlightened words. Each word is Buddha's mind. He goes on to say, if we take the precepts as Buddha's mind, Buddha's teaching, we can each behave as a Buddha. But if we take them as a moral sense, we become moral people. So I just love that. So anyways, just going back, dwelling, letting the dwelling makes the issue whatever it is. If we're talking about somebody else, if we're talking about an error that we made, a mistake we felt like we did, it just blows it out of proportion. It ends up seeming like it's just so much bigger than it actually was. It ends up weighing us down in judgments. It ends up dominating our thoughts and our feelings. All those things like anger, guilt, shame starts arising with all of that. And we end up defining ourselves and defining others. You know, we look at people if they've accomplished something, if they've been successful. We kind of define them in this very positive light. And that just feeds the ego. It either feeds our ego if we're defining ourselves by our successes and contributions, everything we've done well. But then on the other hand, if we're defining people by their mistakes, the things that they're doing wrong, then we're just tearing people down and diminishing them. And so I thought that was something that was really coming up for me when you really look at why we're either judging for ourselves and dwelling on those past mistakes, or why we're doing that with others. It goes back to that intent, really, like what we were talking about with Penny. It really goes back to the intent. Why are we doing that? And we definitely are not in the moment if we're doing it. So I think that really, I'm sorry for rambling a little. I wrote down so much and I had so many thoughts in my mind, and I knew I was really limited on time. But it seemed like that one thing, there was actually another, I don't know how we're doing for time, 5 after, there was another situation that came up right about the same time that was kind of in my face. As many of you know, I have an Airbnb next to me. And they sit out there in that hot tub, they party, they throw their garbage in my yard, they're up all night, you know, they're screaming and yelling. It's just kind of a nightmare at times. And I had that same time that I was working on this, I'm sitting at the table and there was a woman that had sat in that hot tub right next to my window, basically, for 3 days on her cell phone. And she was talking so loud for 3 solid days. It was like fingernails on a chalkboard for 3 days. And I kept getting more and more agitated. And I just kept telling myself, Kim, sit down, relax, meditate, try to take some deep breaths. And finally, I took the loudest speaker that I had in the house and I put Metallica on it and I set it on my back deck. I got so tired of it. And this is all in the midst of while I'm trying to write my talk tonight. And so again, after that was done, I had a lot of that dwelling of, did you handle that in a good Buddhist way, Kim? What could you have done different? What would your teacher say? And when I asked myself that, what would Jioshin tell you? The thing that popped up for me, Jioshin looked at me one day in Sanzen and said, I can't even remember what brought it to this point, but she said, Kim, what do you think about rules? The very first thing that came out of my mouth was, I think they're there to be broken. And so when I was sitting here writing this and thinking about what would all the other Buddhists do in my Sangha in that situation, it kind of brought that up for me, the rules that we kind of think we have and what happens when we break them and what self-talk we're doing with ourselves. So that's kind of my talk tonight, a little transparent, a little rambly. But so how did this arise for all of you tonight?
Two things for me, one of which was when you started out, you said something along the lines of, it's not about you, it's about other people. And there's a certain merit to that. But one of the things I learned through practice is that the way you treat yourself, whether or not you believe it or not, is the way you treat other people and vice versa. So what you are as important as other people. The way I've interpreted this precept is by not finding fault with others around me. And it has had an incredible effect on how other people treat me. It's just been a revelation. But your stories remind me a lot more of the principle of anger. And I really feel for you. I know there's times in my life when I would have reacted very similarly as far as the music goes. I can definitely feel that.
Choan, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to thank Choan for your candor and telling your stories on yourself. And I also would also back what Dixie said. It made me want to tell you not to be so hard on yourself in a way. I mean, but the thing that I got also from your talk is the importance of the word dwelling. So these things come up. We all make mistakes, and then we wish we hadn't. But the important thing is just to change the behavior, I guess, and not just keep either hating on someone else or building resentments, which is a big one for me. These can, when it's directed to other people, it can. I'm very good at escalating into resentments, or if it's directed towards myself, into guilt and shame. So not dwelling, that's the key. Thank you very much, Choan.
The thing I was connecting with is that in the AA program, it talks about, if you want what we have, these are the steps we have taken. There isn't any thou shalt not, or do it or not do it. It's, if you want to be a Buddhist and you want to feel the mindfulness and the grace of Buddhism, these are the steps that we've taken. These are the precepts that we've taken. And we all do it in our own way. That's all.
Choan, I really
oh,
appreciated what you know, talking about yourself and everything, and I also like the word dwell, because my tendency is when I make a mistake, I do dwell on it, and I have to, you know, let it go. I mean, after all, oh well, you know, I'm human, I make mistakes. So you know, I really appreciate, you know, you're concentrating on the word dwell. And it makes me think, okay, and dwelling on my past mistakes does make me dwell more on others mistakes as well. So you know, that gives me something to work on, to think about. Thank you.
Anybody else? I do think that dwelling is really what arose for me in all those situations. It was like, how long am I going to hang on to this? You know, I feel like I had a misstep, both situations. Felt like, you know, I didn't, you know, that constriction that Jyotian sometimes talks about, that stickiness that you feel afterwards, when you just like, oh, that didn't sit right with me. I think that really is what rose for me in this precept, is that how long do you sit with that? Do you sit and just, you can't change what you did. And, but I think that it takes some practice and some really intent to not sit and perseverate on it for, you know, 2, 3 nights, 4 nights, you know, wondering how, now when I go back to the office, how am I going to handle that? You know, instead of just go back to the office and get the pan out and, you know, bring it home and let it go and not do anything more about it and not think about it anymore. Yeah, it's that dwelling and perseverating and all that negative self-talk that comes up when you're doing that.
I think I say this every single time we talk about this precept, but in the I can't think of the name of the book, but one of the books we read, the way she interprets this precept is, or at least this is the way I remember it, is everybody's a stranger. And that really helps me a lot, because I have a really hard time like not dwelling on things. I think it's just the way my brain works. Like I have a brain that just goes over and over. I think because I go over and over things, and it's really hard to like not go over things over and over. So that part about the second part of this precept, create wisdom from ignorance, is sort of like the antidote to that, I think. And it really helps to kind of stop that and just, okay, like, let me think about this person in a different way for a minute here. You know, kind of stops that mind going in circles kinds of things.
It's kind of that part of learning from our lessons, creating wisdom from ignorance. I mean, that situation with work, definitely, you know, I've had, you know, honestly needing to, or I've created some wisdom from that ignorance of doing holding onto that pan for years in my office. So, and I had to literally check myself and kind of peel back the layers, what it was that was poking at me. So, yeah.
I read a story once about the Dalai Lama, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but the Dalai Lama, I think, was being interviewed about past mistakes. And I can't remember what the exact interview question was, but the story that came up was about an elderly monk who was a gardener, I think, and he went to the Dalai Lama and said, "I'm just having so much trouble, bending my knees and weeding and doing this physical work." And the Dalai Lama said, "Well, don't do it anymore then." And the monk went and killed himself, hung himself or something. And this was pretty horrifying. The interviewer said, "Oh my God, how did you ever get through that?" And he thought, he like paused and thought about it and said, "Well, I didn't. It's still there, but I just don't let it bring me down." Which I thought was pretty simple and beautiful, really. Anyway.
Totally. Thanks, everybody.
Well, thank you guys so much. What good discussions. Great discussions. I'm looking forward to next week, and I guess somebody should say a verse. Somebody want to say a verse? Who knows the verse? Okay. Please make catch up. How does it go? Dwelling in this ephemeral world like a lotus in muddy water, the mind is pure and goes beyond. Thus we bow to Buddha. All Buddhas throughout space and time, all honored ones, bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, wisdom beyond wisdom, Maha Prajna Paramita.
Okay.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
Thanks.